You're listening to The World at 8 with Lynn Mozart. The World at 8, the number one in nationalist news.
Highlights of the news today, Friday the 10th of November. Labour's Dave McLuckie is not so lucky. Tesco's fined for employing illegal workers. Report from Nick Griffin, MEP, Strasbourg victory and more. US drone shot at by Iranian Air Force jet. The Argentinian witch gets it from her own people. Thought for the day, extremism, is it another form of nationalism? And finally, too fat to execute for murder? Only in the United States. UK News. GazetteLive.co.uk is reporting former Cleveland Police Authority chairman and Labour councillor Dave McLuckie has been arrested for the second time as a result of Operation Sacristy investigations. It reports that a spokeswoman for Operation Sacristy, the corruption probe into Cleveland Police Authority, said a 51-year-old man has been arrested by members of the Operation Sacristy team. The man was arrested on October 16th on suspicion of perverting the course of justice, obtaining a pecuniary advantage by deception and a fraud offence. He was interviewed and released on police bail until 16th of November 2012. Pecuniary, for those interested, means financial, so it would appear Mr McLuckie had his hand in somebody else's pocket. Operation Sacristy is a criminal probe into corruption within the Cleveland Police Authority that has seen former Chief Constable Sean Price dismissed for gross misconduct. One World at 8 spokesperson commented, "This is what happens when you add corrupt political party to the police force." McLuckie was actually on bail at the time of his second arrest. Operation Sacristy has now cost the taxpayer over £1.6 million. Now we are about to have the soon-to-be elected police commissioners take charge. Don't expect it to get better, it will only get worse. Superstore chain Tesco has been fined £115,000 for employing illegal foreign workers. More than 30 illegal student workers of 12 different nationalities were arrested by the border agency. They were breaking the rules of their visas by working more hours than allowed. One shopper said, "My son has been out of work for 2 years and has applied for work in various supermarkets and has been pushed aside because he is expensive, or should I say, British." One spokesperson commented, "I'm outraged by Tesco's actions. Allowing illegal workers to take the jobs British students should have to help pay for their education and living. I will not shop at Tesco anymore or fill my car with petrol there either. British people who are fed up with foreign workers allowed by our corrupt government are now shopping a legal worker, and I suggest everyone to do the same." Now I hand you over to Nick Griffin, MEP, and his report from the belly of the beast.
Well, my friends, the nationalist news story this week, perhaps of this entire year, is the stunning victory of Arthur Redfern over the government in the Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg. Of course, in an ideal world, Arthur would have taken his case to the highest court in our land, the once mighty House of Lords, and have secured justice there. Mind you, in that ideal world, Arthur wouldn't have lost his bus driving job on account of his membership of the British National Party in the first place. In an ideal world, the ones in court would have been the gang of far-left thugs whose threats of violence gave the greedy global corporation Serco the excuse to sack a man. They should have been in court and then in prison. But, as we all know, we live not in an ideal world, but in a degraded, depressing, liberal totalitarian state. How else can you describe a place in which leading MPs from all the establishment parties sponsor and succour gangs of far-left thugs who attack and intimidate not only the real opposition, but also those who simply dare to employ or even be driven by members of that party? Before he was elected as a British National Party councillor in 2004, Arthur Redfern, a quiet, gentle, middle-aged man with an artificial leg, had been nominated as the best co-worker by other people working with him, helping the disabled in his home city of Bradford. Among those who recognised his exceptional qualities was his Asian supervisor. As a result of the interbreeding dangers of marrying first cousins, a hugely disproportionate number of disabled children in Bradford are of Pakistani descent, and Arthur helped to give those children care and the best possible standard of life, treating them exactly as well as he treated everyone else. Yet he was thrown out of his job within a fortnight of being elected to represent local people for the crime of belonging to and standing for the BNP and standing up for what he believed in. Truly, the decision was a slap in the face for thousands of our voters as much as it was for Arthur Redfern. Arthur spent tens of thousands of pounds of his own money taking his case through the courts. First he won, then lost on appeal, and finally was refused leave to take the case to the House of Lords. That was what forced him and his lawyers to take the case to the Human Rights Court. That was all years ago. After all, he was unfairly sacked way back in 2004. Having used his last money to submit his final appeal, Arthur settled down to try to get his life back in order. Amazingly, the first he knew of his stunning victory was when I managed to get hold of an old friend of his to pass on my congratulations. Both Arthur and his delighted lawyers received their copy of the judgment because I sent it to them. I don't know about you, but I don't really think that's right either. Still, it's good to be the bearer of glad tidings for a change. So here's some more. Unless the current government has the nerve to launch a final appeal, the way is now clear for Arthur and several dozen other people who've been victimised in the same way over the years to claim substantial compensation for having been so badly treated. Truly, it's a great decision, and not just for our members. Arthur Redfern's victory is not just for us, it's for every single person in Britain who's ever been persecuted for their beliefs. Even more important, it's a massive step forward towards securing the right of every single person in Britain to hold and express unorthodox, anti-establishment beliefs in the future. No nationalist has ever won a more important victory for democracy and freedom. Arthur Redfern's victory really is as important as that. So spread the word. If you're an old hand, dig through your old address books and have a good think about anyone who might have been sacked or discriminated against on account of their being with us. Then contact them, pass them this information, and tell them to get in contact either with us or a decent lawyer. Arthur Redfern has given us a new weapon in our long war for justice and freedom. Pick it up and use it. You won't be alone. Arthur himself will now have to go back to court in order to turn his moral and legal victory into a financial one. The party was able to help with some legal advice in the early days of Arthur's fight, but there came a point when we could do no more, and the whole burden fell on his shoulders. When the time comes to finish this fight, and it should come sooner than Cameron and the rest of the Westminster crew want, I'm determined that, if he needs it, we'll be helping Arthur once again, though I'll need your help to do so. The verdict did receive quite a lot of coverage in the media. It won't surprise you to learn that the BBC produced the most outrageously biased coverage, marking a huge victory for the British National Party, not by having on one of our spokesmen, but Wayman Bennett, the head orc of Unite Against Freedom, gnashing his pointed teeth and spewing his poisonous lies on the Jeremy Vine show. Still, a number of media outlets did mention my Twitter coverage of the news, leading to another healthy increase in my growing number of Twitter followers. Most British MEPs have about 1,500. Only 3 of us stand up head, shoulders, torsos and legs above the 69 others. At the top, with about 40,000, is the BBC-backed safety valve Nigel Farage. Next, with some 22,000, is the Tory Eurosceptic Daniel Hannan, who has the distinct advantage of being allowed to write regular, and often rather good, columns in various national newspapers, including the Telegraph and the Mail. So I'm very pleased now to be breathing down Mr. Hannan's Tory blue neck, with nearly 20,000 Twitter followers. But I do want to overtake him soon. So if you're not already a follower, please click on the link on the right of our homepage and sign up. Then retweet some of my comments and help me to attract even more followers. It's not a matter of vanity. The power of such social networking to form opinions and build grassroots support is immense. We're up there with the best, in Farage's case the worst of them, but with a bit more united effort we can do even better. Which we need to do because our time is coming. The entire establishment, to which we're the only real alternative, is in desperate trouble. The social networks are now alive with the names of the highly placed suspects in the network of paedophile rings in the Commons, Lords, Judiciary, media and police, which are beginning to emerge now the Savile scandal has opened the establishment's Pandora's box. Some of those accused may of course be innocent of the crime of sexual abuse of children, although none is innocent of treason. But I have no doubt that many of the allegations are true. I refer you to the important article, Paedophile Ring Scandal Tightens Around Establishment's Neck, published on our website on the 8th of November, and ask that you cut and paste it and send it on to as many people as possible. It's still possible that the powers that be may manage to slam the lid shut again, but if they cannot, the Savile scandal that's already mutated first into a BBC scandal and then into a Tory grandee scandal could become even more virulent. It could now easily infect not just the Conservative Lord in the frame for the North Wales children's home abuse, but some of the most powerful men in the Tory party. Cameron's breakfast TV gaffe, when confronted with a list of alleged Tory child sex beasts, could easily turn into the defining disaster of his disastrous out-of-touch premiership. It clearly showed that he's more worried about the phantom red herring of homophobia than about protecting children and securing long-delayed justice for the victims of horrific child abuse. Incidentally, given that virtually all the top Tories on the infamous but widely available internet list are married, Cameron's comments about it being a witch hunt of people who just happen to be gay was particularly revealing. Now, it's really no concern of anyone else's if a few married Tory cabinet ministers, or anyone else for that matter, happen to go off and bat for the other side once in a while. If it's a sin, it's a matter between them and their maker. If not, it's just a matter between them and their wives. What does matter is the inconvenient but scientifically proven fact that while between only 1 and less than 3% of the male population is homosexual, 25% of paedophiles are homosexual. Please note that I'm not saying that all, or even 25% of homosexuals are child molesters. Of course they're not. And I know of a few loyal party members who are discreetly gay, and they are as disgusted by the child abusers, by the wicked cover-up, and by paedophile apologists, such as the revolting Peter Tatchell and Harriet Harman, as the rest of us are. What grown adults do with other consenting adults in private is entirely up to them, and any state claiming the right to pry into, let alone legislate on, such activities would be dangerously overmighty and a threat to the freedom of every citizen in the land. But the deliberate covering up of proven scientific facts is part of the broader cover-up of establishment corruption, both sexual and financial, and the two are intertwined. Which is why those Tories should be investigated by the police and a full public inquiry. And finally, after decades of deceit and cover-up and the ruined lives of the victims, there's now a really good chance that it's all going to come out into the open. And once the twisted Tories have been exposed and laid low, the old risk of mutually assured destruction, if Tweedledum exposes Tweedledee's perverts, Tweedledee will out Tweedledums, will have been removed. So the Tories will be free, indeed driven, to tell us all Labour's dirty child abuse secrets, probably starting in the Leicester area, although no doubt they know plenty more. At that point, what is left of both parties would have no reason to leave the Lib Dems out of the disgrace, and another batch of establishment skeletons would come rattling out of the closet. All of which would help secure justice for the victims, punish the guilty, and protect children in the future. It would also reshape British politics for good and give a huge boost to the anti-establishment party that has always spoken out against grooming and cover-ups and which has long sought to draw attention to the fact that the current establishment is in fact little more than a giant crime syndicate. The British National Party may have a few slightly rough, honest working-class edges, but at least our hands are clean.
Thank you, Nick. Informative as usual and a thought-provoker. World news. An American drone aircraft that had been reported to have been shot at in the Gulf was attacked by Iranian fighter jets. The drone, a Predator-class aircraft, was said to have been unarmed when the Iranians opened fire. One Iranian source said, if a foreign spy plane was a threat to your country, would you not expect your air force to try and bring it down? Although the drone was not hit in the attack, the Pentagon has said that it has created tension in the region. One Iranian said it's Big Israel spying for Little Israel. Anti-British Argentinian President Cristina Fernández has finally got what was coming to her. The Argentinian witch, as she is known to some ex-British servicemen who bravely fought in the Falklands War to help British islanders, is facing a possible riot in Argentine capital Buenos Aires. Thousands who want to see Fernandez removed as Argentine president have staged hours of protest over corruption, rises in crime and soaring inflation. The witch, who wants to steal the Falklands with the backing of Zionist Sean Penn and Marxist failed singer Morrissey, faced the biggest protest against her seedy government for years. Thought for the day. Extremism. Is it another form of nationalism? Golden Dawn takes advantage of recession-ravaged Greece, bleats the Telegraph, hurrying on with fascist gangs are turning Athens into a city of shifting front lines, seizing on crimes and local protests to promote their own movement, by claiming to be the defenders of recession-ravaged Greece. In fact, the usual anti-fascist phrases we all know so well in nationalism. The Telegraph describes the followers of Golden Dawn as thugs wearing the black t-shirts of the neo-Nazi Golden Dawn Party and are carrying out attacks on immigrant markets and in public squares, according to the United Nations, with victims speaking of areas in the capital which are now strictly off limits. The undisguised extremism promoted by Golden Dawn is a chilling watershed in Greece's post-war democracy. It appears that Golden Dawn members led a crowd of enraged locals in a protest on Mikhail Voda Street that turned violent despite the presence of riot police, because a local barber had been stabbed by a person of colour, so all hell was let loose. Now we in nationalism especially run the risk of being extreme, mainly because the concerns we have as individuals and a party are around contentious areas. It is these very areas that make the other three main political parties in the UK wishy-washy and useless, because they want to remain popular with the youth and the immigrants, one section who have been indoctrinated in education and the other section who will always vote either for their own or for the party that gives them the most brownie points. We in the British National Party do not do that, but run the risk of being extreme anyway. It would seem that the Telegraph, by the very carefully taken pictures of black shirts and torchlight, are obviously aligning GD with the black shirts and pre-war Germany. Now we all know there only has to be a whisper of ethno-nationalism and the papers take off with a vengeance. GD believes quite rightly that Greece is on the precipice, and they are, despite their extremism, thinking of their country and their people. Of course the Germans were as well. They had barely survived the Treaty of Versailles, and some members of the Jewish population had moved in and had control of the banks and lending houses, as well as vast areas of rented property. Now in the terrible times that followed, I know that the wealthy Jews who had cashed in on the German people could afford to leave, and they did in their droves. The unfortunate Jews who had done nothing but live and work in Germany for the last 600 years did not. You could liken the no-go areas that the Golden Dawn are making to the no-go areas in our large towns and cities, which are almost under Sharia law, and even the police do not go there. Extremism comes in all forms and all colours and all religions. We have people who are violently anti-Zionist but not anti-Jewish. We have people who are anti-American and anti-corporate. We even have people who seem to be pro-Arab and anti-Israel. We have some who are anti-everything but England. And we have the usual Zionist conspiracy which leaves the Arabs and Muslims looking like angels. It must be remembered that the Nazis had the Turks as allies and used the Muslims in North Africa. Hitler also had a liking for the Indians, describing them as true Aryans, and even took the swastika for his own, which is an ancient symbol of Aryan peace. Now the sad but true fact is that if you love your country, you will hate anything that could divide or conquer it. The mere fact that what you might hate is a different colour, culture or religion is really immaterial in the sum total of things. The prime option here is country, people and self. Golden Dawn, despite their image, does care and at least has the honesty of being seen not to care if it makes any mistakes. It is a very sad omelette without breaking eggs. The trouble any organisation has, if they are nationalistically based and formed, is that of the Marxist left and the socialist liberals. These creeds rule the media, the television, the United Nations and the European Union. Their rule of thumb is never to let anyone as powerful as Hitler rise again and bring power to their own country. as indeed he did before he started taking over other countries. The carve-up of Europe with the help of the communists after World War II proves that new world order. But of course nothing lasts forever, and this did not last. But of course most of the problems Europe has now are from the demolishing of that wall and the ensuing rush of people that even communism could not feed. This, combined with a disastrous EU open border policy and the rush from the third world, has and will contribute more flesh for the nationalist cause. The more immigration that governments allow in will not make the existing populations integrate or welcome being enriched. It will make them resist and turn to even more extremes of nationalism. That is the danger. I do not believe that we British especially are so beaten down we will not look around eventually for our own saviour, and it might well come in the guise of an extremist. Golden Dawn is just the beginning, and no amount of stupid photos and biased rhetoric will alter that course. As one Greek lady said, "It is us who have no one to protect us," Mrs. Ziru said. "We are hungry, we have no jobs, there is crime everywhere." Now do you see the similarity? Take your choice, extremism or death. I know which one I have chosen. And finally, a condemned killer fighting his execution because of his extreme weight does not have accessible veins in his arms or hands and cannot receive a lethal injection in his legs because he's so obese, a doctor told a court. Ronald Post, 53, who weighs nearly 29 stone, has appealed to the court in Columbus, Ohio, to stop his execution because his weight could cause him to suffer severe pain during the procedure. The state is opposing the request. Post is due to die on January 16, 2013 for the 1983 shooting death of Helen Vance in Elyria. Her son Bill has called Post's arguments laughable. Post is so large that IVs could not be inserted as part of the sentence procedure of lethal injection. This presenter says, "I have the perfect solution. Hang him and his weight will do the job for you." But what I can't understand is why he's been on death row so long. He might have been thinner when he first got in there, and perhaps he's been eating himself to death to make it impossible to carry out the sentence. Only in the States, bless him. You have been listening to The World at 8. I'm Lynn Mozart, and I and the team at Radio Britain wish you all a very happy and a very safe weekend. Said a 51-year-old man has been arrested by members of the Operation Sacristy team. The man was arrested on October 16th on suspicion of perverting the course of justice, obtaining a pecuniary advantage by deception and a fraud offence. He was interviewed and released on police bail until 16th of November 2012. Pecuniary, for those interested, means financial, so it would appear Mr McLucky had his hand in somebody else's potates. UK News. GazetteLive.co.uk is reporting former Cleveland Police Authority Chairman and Labour councillor Dave McLucky has been arrested for the second time as a result of Operation Sacristy investigations. It reports that a spokeswoman for Operation Sacristy, the corruption probe into Cleveland Police Authority, Operation Sacristy is a criminal probe into corruption within the Cleveland Police Authority that has seen former Chief Constable Sean Price dismissed for gross misconduct. One World at 8 spokesperson commented, "This is what happens when you add corrupt political party to the police force." McLucky was actually on bail at the time of his second arrest. Operation Sacristy has now cost the taxpayer over £1.6 million. Labour's Dave McLucky is not so lucky. Tesco's fined for employing illegal workers. Report from Nick Griffin MEP, Strasbourg victory and more. US drone shot at by Iranian Air Force jet. The Argentinian witch gets it from her own people. Thought for the day, extremism, is it another form of nationalism? And finally, too fat to execute for murder? Only in the United States.
You're listening to The World at 8 with Lynn Mozart. The World at 8, the number one in nationalist news.
Hi highlights of the news today, Friday the 10th of November.